Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. And later we'll be hearing from Kentucky Senator Rand Paul and his wife about the attack over brush on his yard that led to his being attacked and 6 ribs broken. It's been a tough few months for him. That's later on. But first, Lexington Police Chief Lawrence Weathers is here. The chief took over back in March. It marked a return to the department that he had retired from after a career that started there back in 1989. But Chief Weathers' Lexington connections go way deeper than that. He grew up in Lexington's Bluegrass, Aspendale, and Hollow Creek neighborhoods, along with 9 brothers and sisters. And after a time heading up law enforcement for Fayette County Schools, Weathers accepted a job as chief of the Lexington-Fayette Urban County Police Department, the Division of Police, earlier this year. 2018 is proving to be tough. There have been 18 homicides so far, on track to break a record that was set last year. Shootings are frequent, neighbors are often on edge, and you know that. But Chief Weathers is moving quickly and strategically to try to work with the community to make things safer, and he joins us on Kentucky Newsmakers. Thanks for coming in. We do appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your upbringing and so forth. As we said, the deep Lexington connections.
Yes,
you grew up here. You know this town. What was it like growing up in the 70s and 80s?
Growing up here in the 70s and the 80s, it was typical and it was fine. Of course, I was raised by a single parent with 10 children in the house, so there were some difficult times. But our mother was strict, and we lived in a community that expected you to abide by the laws and, you know, protect your family, take care of your family. And don't disrespect. Don't disrespect your neighbors. Don't disrespect people. That was all part of growing up here.
Did that make a big difference?
It made a big difference. It seemed like everybody made an effort to try to know everybody, and I think that's a little different today.
What has changed?
Well, what has changed? Definitely technology has changed the way we relate to everybody. There was a time when you left home, your phone was at home and you were totally disconnected. Now you're connected all the time, anytime, everywhere, and that plays a big part in how we communicate with each other, because we really don't talk face to face. We really don't get out and make an effort to know each other personally. Nowadays, when you ask people how many friends they have, they'll easily tell you, "Oh, I've got 3,000 Facebook friends or Snapchat or whatever it is." So, and I don't think you really make those connections.
You don't have the deep relationships and the people who might tell you you're a little out of line here,
Right.
sometimes, and help you make corrections maybe in your life along the way.
Right, and sometimes what I see with that is where when I was growing up, it was nothing for neighbors to say, "Hey, stop doing that," or "I'm going to go tell your parents." And now it seems like people are reluctant to do that. And you see on the news media, even I was looking at a story today where somebody was in the neighborhood canvassing for an election, and somebody called on them and said, "Oh, somebody's suspicious out here." When I think back in the day, somebody would have said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Mm-hmm. And I think people have a fear to make that connection because we're not being brought up that way today.
So it's tough, and something is lost. There's no question about that, but it's challenging as well.
It's tough. It's challenging, but you know what? Where we are today didn't happen overnight, so it's going to take work to get back to it, and I believe that we can get back to it.
Why did you become a police officer?
Not for any of the traditional reasons. People say, "Well, I always dreamed of being a police officer." Well, I didn't. Growing up in the family that I grew up in, it wasn't as stressed to go to college, but I was lucky enough to have brothers and sisters go to college, so I thought that might be a route. But what was stressed was, or what I knew was, that if I wanted to go to college, my mother was going to help me as much as she could, but I knew that was going to be limited and that the burden would have to be on me, so I had to work during college. And the goal for completing college was to get a good job so you can make a decent life, so you can have a family and take care of your family. I never dreamed of being a police officer. That was something I never thought about. What I did think about was what I wanted for my future. And when I saw the ad in the paper for a police officer, I looked at what benefits it provided. I looked at the stability that it provided for your life. And I said, I think I'll try that. And when I joined the police department, I didn't even know you had to go to a police academy. And I didn't know you had to go there and stay overnight and for 10 weeks. But I found all of that out when I got there. It was, it was a culture shock for me. But I'm glad I did it.
Then you become an officer and you're patrolling many of the streets that you grew up on.
Yes.
And so you have, as we were talking, you had those some connections with folks and all of that. How important was that, sort of a community policing approach that you were able to have because you knew people?
It was important. Even I grew up in those areas, and even after I became a police officer, I still lived in that area. Mm-hmm. So on duty, you would make those connections, and off duty, you would maintain those connections. There were times when I would arrest people that I knew, but it's all in how you treat people. Just because somebody makes a mistake doesn't mean you have to disrespect them. And I would like to think that I showed that respect because when I go out with my family, we go shopping. We go shopping where everybody else goes. Mm-hmm. We're out in the community, and people see us. And there's times I've come across people that I've arrested, people that I had dealings with out through the course of my job, and it's not, oh, there's Officer Weathers, I hate him. It's, hey, how you doing? Yeah. And it's like, hey,
are there occasions when some have told you that maybe you helped them get back on the right track?
Oh, several times. I had one man come up to me, and he told me that he had 2 twin girls, and if it wasn't for me and the way I treated him when I arrested him and helping him get on the right track, that he would have lost those girls forever. And now they're a very important part of his life, as they should be, but how that taught him respect for himself and for his family.
It makes you feel good. After your career with the Lexington Police Department, you spent some time with the Fayette County school system with their law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
It couldn't be more timely than the situations that have happened in recent years with school violence and so forth, that you lead the police department during a time like this.
Everything's connected. The school system is not separate from the community. The police department's not separate from the community. We're all connected. So for me, leaving the schools to come back to the police department and work, it was difficult. I enjoyed the work there. I immensely enjoyed working around all the people. The superintendent is great. My boss, Shelley Chatfield, who was legal counsel over there, she was great to work with. So, and all the other officers that worked there, they were great. But I guess, for lack of a better term, I was born and raised with the Lexington Police Department, and I always kind of felt like I should come back home.
I mean, you were retired, and
yes,
this was a second career for you to go to the school system before you now take this third career path and you do this as accepted the job as chief. Were you, when you knew that position was going to come available, were you immediately interested?
No, sir. When I heard it came available, when I left the police department, I didn't leave my friends there. Chief Ron Compton, Chief Dwayne Holman, Chief Sean Coleman, and Chief Melissa Sedlacek. We were all friends. So, I was kind of rooting for one of them, and Ron Compton and I came on together, and he's probably one of the real reasons I got into supervision to begin with at the police department. So, I was kind of rooting for, one of them. But they actually called me and asked me if I was interested, and I was like, well, you know, we'll see. And then I got a call from the mayor, and I was like, oh wow, this is real. And it was a chance to go back home and try to make a difference.
And you've come in during a difficult time.
Yes.
The city is on edge with these shootings that have been happening. Many nights we come in here to do the morning news, and someone has been shot fatally, or there's been what appears to be random gunfire in some neighborhood and so forth. How do you describe the situation that the city of Lexington is dealing with right now, and what are you trying to do to solve it?
Well, the first thing that I really need to try to do, and that we're trying to do, is we have to put things in perspective. None of the homicides that we're dealing with are random. Violent crime, aside from the homicides, is down in Lexington. It's been going down over the last few years, trying to get that message out. And you know, I understand, you know, that statistics don't really make people feel safe when all they see is homicides on the news, because the other stuff really doesn't get reported as much, but the homicides do, and it makes people feel like there's danger out there. What I need to tell people, and what people need to understand, is that none of these are random. Some of them are happening because of the positions that people put themselves in. On the flip side of that, I have to realize that some of the methods that are being used by some of these criminals can endanger the public, and have in the past endangered the public. So there's a concern about it. When I talk to my officers, I tell them, look, you're dealing with some people that are involved in activities that they don't want the police to discover. For instance, some of the homicides we're dealing with are drug related, obviously. People who sell drugs don't want to be detected by the police. People who buy drugs don't want to be detected by the police. So they're going to do things to avoid the normal areas that we patrol, so they can meet up and carry out what kind of deals that they want to carry out. So when I talk to my officers, I tell them, you can't just go where you normally go. You got to go to different places. You got to get out. You got to talk to people. Yeah, sometimes you might have to write tickets or citations, and sometimes you might have to make an arrest. But during those times, you've got to get out. You've got to meet people. You've got to know who's in your neighborhood. Much like that lady that was canvassing, if somebody came out and talked to her, they would know why they were there, and then they wouldn't have any concerns. So my officers need to do that too. They need to get out. They need to see who's there. You know? No, it's not against the law for people to be out at 3:30, 2:30 in the morning. But it's not against the law for me to ask, hey, why you out? It's not. It shouldn't be out of ordinary for our community to be asking people about that, because the reality is that sometimes that can lead to bad things. So we should all make it our business to be aware of what's going on our streets.
Are your officers receptive to the community policing model like you described?
Well, everybody talks about that like it's a new thing. I'm also a certified police instructor. Yes. I got certified to instruct community policing back in 1996. So it's been around for a long time, you know, since the 70s. I don't know if there's any other way to police. We are the community. You know, we only have our position, our job, and our authority because of the community. So I don't see that as being separate. The officers, I don't think they see that as being separate either. It's not a us versus them mentality. It's a we. You know, at some of the crime scenes that we go to, it's not, oh, the police is here to do a job. It's that we got to help the community, because we all realize that when something like this happens, or like a homicide happens, that fear is going to spread, and we've got to do something to quell that fear, because if we don't, people won't talk. People won't give us information. And
which is what you need.
That's right. Exactly what I need. You know, people can tell me, well, I hear shots in my neighborhood all the time. Do you call? No, because it's just shots. Well, that kind of complacency, I think, can give people who are involved in criminal activity the leeway to think that this neighborhood doesn't care. So when you hear that stuff, call. Yeah, I might not be able to find who's doing the shots, but at least they know, hey, if I do something like that, the police are going to swarm in here. And that'll eventually make them decide this is not the place to do what I'm doing.
We're with Lexington's Police Chief Lawrence Weathers on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. We have a lot more questions for him in just a moment. What kind of officers is he trying to hire these days? We'll be back with that. And U.S. Senator Rand Paul will be also with us. An interview from him coming up in just a bit on Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers as we visit with Lexington Police Chief Lawrence Weathers. A very interesting and candid interview here where we're hearing about a lot of what he is up against and about how he hopes the community will step up and help them. I mean, it is very much a two-way street with law enforcement, isn't it, Chief?
It is. You know, the reality of it is police can't be everywhere at once. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Public safety is everybody's business. It's my job to police. You know, if people don't want to adhere to the expectations of society, and that means society has to let them know what those expectations are. You know, like I say, when people are hanging out at night and you think they're dealing drugs, you know, you see cars come up or something like that, well, you got to call. You don't have to actually wait to actually be able to prove that they're doing that before you call. That's my job. I'll go up there and I'll talk to them, I'll investigate and try to find out what's going on. If they got a legitimate, if they're not out there doing crime or anything like that, they're just hanging out, so be it. Hey, it's summertime, it's hot, I understand that. But you gotta let them know what the community expects, what kind of behavior the community expects. And that's what safety is all about, is put your expectations out there and making sure people are held accountable for that.
Keeping the number of officers that you need on the streets is a challenge, and you, I know, had requested some additional funding that was not in the current budget. I know you're requesting it again. You need more officers, and right?
I would like to have more officers. You know, shootings is just one aspect of what we do. You know, community policing is another aspect, but you know, there's property crimes that we have to worry about, and shooting is just one side of violence. There's all other types of violent crime too. A few of our homicides are related to domestic violence. You know, we have to do something to prevent that. We have to look at the drug use, the opioid crisis. We have to look at that and be able to prepare officers to deal with that, and to be able to prepare our officers and have the police to deal with comes after that. So,
opioid crisis has changed a lot of things, hasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, makes it difficult. Is your hiring officers? What are you looking for? What are the requirements?
Well, the requirements is you don't have to have a college degree. You have to have a high school diploma or equivalent. We'd like you to have some college. We don't necessarily need you to have advanced education degrees in law enforcement or something like that, because we'll teach you how to be the police. If you have some college, that's great. If you don't have any, that's okay too, because you go through our academy and you'll get an associate's degree, and then the city is stepped up to the plate, and they know how important and how valuable it is to have educated officers, so they'll help pay for your continuing college education all the way up through your master's degree.
So you have a lot who take advantage of that.
Right.
Yeah. During your tenure, you were also involved in investigating complaints against officers, so you kind of know from that standpoint as well what you're dealing with when you get a call in that regard.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
that was very, very interesting. And what I learned most of all from that is the majority of our officers, and when I say majority, I'm talking about 99.9%, are doing the right thing and trying to do the right thing. And yeah, people do make mistakes, but it's not because they're out there trying to do bad things. It's just that they're human.
Fayette County's public schools, they have, as you've alluded to, but the superintendent has announced a safety plan. It's ambitious, $13.5 million in costs. Again, you know what they're dealing with, and you know how the city can support that. Does the school safety plan make sense to you?
You know what? Superintendent Calk is doing exactly what he said to do. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He started his committee, his safety commission, and they put forth suggestions about what they thought would make schools safer and make the environment safer. And Superintendent Calk said that he would take their recommendations to heart, and he's doing that, and he's asking for the things that they asked for, which to me takes a lot of guts because, you know, not too long ago, another school system asked for a tax increase and it got shot down. But I think that takes great courage and great leadership to do what you said you were going to do in the face of adversity. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense because he didn't just ask people from within, he asked people from the outside. So he's doing what his people from the inside want and people from the outside in the community want. So, I mean, it makes sense to me because that's what leadership's all about. You've got to have the courage to do what people you're working for want you to do.
Chief Weathers, thanks for coming by. I appreciate it. Hope you'll do it from time to time. Yeah, during your tenure. We appreciate it.
All right, thank
Hope
you.
You'll stay with us on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. You'll hear from U.S. Senator Rand Paul and his wife coming up in an exclusive interview done by our station in Bowling Green. We'll be back with that in a moment. Welcome back now to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. Recently, U.S. Senator Rand Paul and his wife talked about the attack on the senator when he was at his home in Bowling Green by a neighbor who was upset about brush that had been piled along their property line. That neighbor, Renee Boucher, is now serving time, or is set to serve some time, 30 days, in federal custody for that, as well as a fine. Federal prosecutors are appealing that. But our WBKO in Bowling Green, our sister station there, talked with the senator and his wife.
Obviously, nobody deserves this. He certainly did not.
Rand and Kelly Paul opened up about the November attack, where Paul's neighbor, Renee Boucher, admitted to attacking him on Paul's property.
He was running so hard that the two of us, by the time he hit me, probably carried 10 feet down the hill. I mean, this was an impact. My doctors have said that they've almost never seen 6 ribs broken in an assault. It's usually a car accident.
Boucher claiming the outrage was out of sheer frustration from several brush piles.
This case has always been about yard maintenance, or the lack of it, I should say.
The Pauls saying this concern was never brought to their attention.
Never ever talked to us, expressed his displeasure over anything. He also never made a formal complaint. But here's the weird thing. Let's say he had. Does that justify breaking someone's ribs?
During our sit-down interview inside their Bowling Green home, the two haven't been as open about the incident up until now.
Seeing Rand suffer in that kind of pain and have that level of injury, and then see people in the media ridicule it or make fun of it. Me, as his wife, who loves Rand and is seeing him suffer like that, that was extremely hurtful.
Boucher was sentenced in federal court to 30 days in prison a few weeks ago. A motion filed Friday to appeal that sentence.
I think 21 months would send a message both to him, but also to other people who are out there that are really angry and upset, no matter what they're upset about, that there are repercussions.
Boucher's attorney, Matt Baker, says his client accepted the punishment in federal court.
He has even publicly apologized to the Pauls, but that apology has apparently and obviously been rejected. Now, not only are we dealing with an appeal of that sentence, but we're also dealing with a newly filed civil personal injury suit.
In return, Boucher is countersuing Rand, his wife Kelly, and the Homeowners Association.
At least a couple of complaints to the attention of members of the HOA board prior to all of this, but nothing was ever done to follow up on it.
Now, since the attack and with Boucher still near, the Pauls say they haven't felt safe.
Bowling Green is our safe sanctuary, and we've lived in this home for 23 years, and we love it, and this is where we always feel the safest and the most secure. We never knew that we lived next to a person that had this kind of rage toward us.
Boucher's attorney says he's trying to move forward.
He has no choice but to defend himself. He is going to file a motion to dismiss the federal appeal to the Sixth Circuit, and we're going to go forward with the claims and the counterclaims in state court.
A politician's wife now fighting tears, hoping that through both of them opening up, this of the many other messages are delivered.
I am so grateful every day to God that he's okay, and we have a great and loving and supportive family, and we'll be fine.
I think we have to do better as a country somehow to get away from all this anger, and that people think violence is the answer to their anger.
That's Kentucky Newsmakers. We want to thank you for joining us. We'll see you bright and early this week on WKYT This Morning. We start early at 4:30, so we're up when you're up, and you make it a good week ahead.